Welcome into the Slobberknocker Sports Podcast. I am your host, Dylan Leake. We're here with our 10th episode. We made it to double digits. My man Turner here with me, as always, to bring you everything in the college football, NFL, and sporting world. And we're going to start with the hottest topic of the day, clearly the thing everybody's talking about, and that is the college football playoff rankings. The final rankings are out. The playoff is set finally. We know who's playing, who's in, who's out, and I'll start with this. A lot of unprecedented things happened when the committee did what they did yesterday. We had the first time ever, I believe, no team outside of the top 6 had ever made it into the playoff going into the final ranking. Number 7, Texas, and number 8, Alabama, both jumped up in there. We had never had an undefeated Power 5 champ left out. Obviously, Florida State got the short end of the stick, did not make it in. First time ever, a one-loss SEC team did not make it in, as Georgia was shorted as well after their loss in the SEC title game to Alabama. But the main question we have to talk about, and I will say, you called this. I'll give you 100% credit. We sat here a couple weeks ago, and I feel like we've been right on a lot of things that we've said the last few weeks. But you called it to a T. You said if Alabama beats Georgia, Florida State is out, and that is exactly what happened. It took some chaos, but did the committee get it right, in your opinion?
I think they definitely got it right as far as building the most competitive playoff they could. Did Florida State get screwed? Do you feel bad for all the kids? Absolutely. It's horrible what happened to them, and I really do feel for them. I said, I guess a few weeks back even, I just felt like this was coming because – well, as soon as, the quarterback injury happened, and, it's definitely the first time a Power 5 undefeated champ gets left out of the playoff. But I can't remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember there ever being an injury at quarterback happening like we had here where, your team is nowhere near as good.
The only example would be Ohio State with Cordell Jones. But when he came in, they won 59-0 in the Big Ten title game, and you're not going to leave that team out, right?
Yeah. So they were mentioning that, and when you win the game 59-0, again, listen, if Florida State would have won that game 31-0, they would have been in. But the committee, it was an ugly, ugly game of football, and they knew that you put Florida State in there. They're probably, 17-point underdogs to Michigan at least. I mean, I don't know what they would have made it, but
something like that. They
were just, never going to have a prayer in that game with their backup quarterback. So I would say the committee got it right. Sucks for Florida State. I'm really looking forward to the playoff. You could tell. I don't know if you saw in the reveal show of who was going to be there, and when Michigan found out they were playing Alabama, there was groans around the little conference room they were in because, if they played Florida State, it was going to be a bye, essentially.
Right, and so I think when people see that, I think the initial reaction is, wow, they're scared of Alabama. I disagree. I think they just thought, wow, if we get Florida State, we're in the national title game. That's why they were upset.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah,
right.
I mean, and they were hoping they were there because, like I said, I mean, I think you said that, the odds makers think that this game's pretty much a pick-em with Michigan and Alabama, and Florida State would have been huge underdogs. The committee knew that. They got it right. They had to make the tough decision. The one thing I will say that is interesting, and I was thinking about, if Georgia would have gone on to win the football game, would Texas have gotten screwed? And I actually believe, weirdly enough, they would have. Because I think the committee would have said, okay, we have our SEC team in here.
That's exactly right.
And I think they would have screwed Texas because they can say, all right, well, we're not going to ruffle any feathers. Florida State went undefeated. We're going to throw them in the playoff. They're going to be sacrificial lambs, obviously, to Michigan, but they deserve to be in it. As soon as Alabama won that game, and everybody was like, the SEC could be out, I was like, there's no shot they're leaving an SEC team out of the playoff. It's not going to happen. So, and I think I told you when we were watching, as soon as Alabama won 2, they obviously can't put them ahead of Texas.
Right.
And they're obviously not leaving them out. So as soon as Florida State looked that bad in that game against Louisville, and obviously was ugly, and the committee, it's the last thing they're watching, it was their death sentence. It would have been very, very interesting if Florida State would have gone on. I still do believe that if Florida State goes on to win that game 41, say it's 41-0, whatever, they dominate the game, I think the committee at that point would probably have to be like, okay, well, we have to put them in our hands or our hands forced. But
would they have left Bama out at that point?
I think they would have because they couldn't justify putting Bama in front of Texas.
That
you
was
just couldn't do it. If that was the big deal, if they did that for the rest of the history of college football, where there was a committee, no one would ever play a tough non-conference game because why would you?
Right.
If the committee says it doesn't matter, then why are you going on the road to Tuscaloosa and potentially losing?
Never schedule that game again.
They had to do that, but ultimately they got it right.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I heard somebody talk about that argument earlier. Like, okay, if Georgia wins, I think most people probably would say, yeah, they probably do leave Texas out because it's an easier deal. I have a huge issue with that because not because I don't agree with it. If Georgia won and Texas got left out and it was 4 undefeated teams, I would have said that's fair. What I have an issue with is the fact that they changed the way they would do that because it's the SEC.
Yep.
And so, I think both things can be true, right? Like Florida State without Jordan Travis, they're not one of the 4 best teams. I get that. But you can also say that they deserve to be in it. So both things can be true. And that's kind of my issue with this. Like, okay, if we're saying it's the 4, there's no consistency here. So if we're saying it's the 4 best teams, we don't have the 4 best teams in here. Georgia is a 5-point favorite against any team in the playoff right now. And they have 1 loss. That's how the power ratings would shake out. Like, I think obviously they were 4.5 at Bama. They would be 4.5-point favorites against Bama on a neutral field again right now. If they play that game when Georgia's healthy, 80% of the time Georgia wins the game. So you're not putting the the argument is, well, is it most deserving or is it 4 best teams? Well, they didn't do either. Now they mixed and picked and chose what they wanted to do to get the best matchups, which is what you said, and I agree. Like, as a fan, I'm thrilled. These are going to be the best games we could have asked for. But you look at just how they chose, like, okay, if you're going to base it on resume, it has to be Florida State in there. If you're going to choose it on the best 4 teams, Georgia can't be left out. They did neither of those. And essentially what screwed Florida State, based on what happened, in my opinion, is the Texas win over Bama. I actually think if Texas doesn't beat Alabama, like let's say Texas didn't play Alabama in the non-conference, and let's just say Alabama had 1 loss, Texas gets left out for sure.
Oh, 100%.
It's easy right there because they're not in the SEC, and that is my problem with it. If Alabama, if you look at nothing else, and you say there's no SEC team in, and Alabama is not in the SEC, they don't get in. They're in because they're in the SEC. That's my problem with it. And here again is another inconsistency thing. And I wanted to mention this. You look at the other thing that they did. The top group of 5 team goes to a New Year's Six Bowl, right? The highest rated college football playoff team of the group of 5 gets to go to an automatic bid to the New Year's Six Bowl.
Yep.
Liberty went undefeated. Their strength of schedule was 132 out of 133 teams. They played the second easiest schedule in college football.
Yep.
The toughest team they beat was New Mexico State, a team who lost to UMass earlier in the year. Then you look at a team like SMU. SMU against Liberty right now would be a 5-point favorite. They were 10-2 in the regular season. They went to Tulane in the American, where they went undefeated in the regular season, beat a ranked Tulane team whose 1 loss was to an SEC team in Ole Miss. The 2 losses that SMU had came because they challenged themselves in the non-conference. They lost at Oklahoma, a game they were completely in most of the way, and they lost at TCU. So to me, you would think, on consistency, right, SMU would be in because they just did this to Florida State, right? Florida State was undefeated. They put Alabama in because they were a better team.
Yeah, but
they put Liberty above SMU, and Liberty goes to a New Year's Six Bowl, and SMU gets left out. That inconsistency right there makes no sense to me.
No,
how can you do that?
And that makes really good sense, but I think we'll have to look it up. I believe the committee doesn't have a say in the New Year's Six Bowl. It's whoever's ranked in the rankings, in the like BCS computer or the rankings, whoever's the highest non-power 5, is as long as you're ranked, gets in.
I thought it was the college football playoff rankings. I could be wrong.
No, well, it's maybe it is, but they're not going to. But my whole point is they can't. I think with that, and we'll have to look it up, but you make a really good point if they actually can choose it. I remember it being, hey, the highest ranked, and it may be through the college football playoff rankings, but they can't, basically their hands are tied when it's like an undefeated, I think when it's like an undefeated conference champion that's in the top 25. I guarantee you everybody in that committee thinks SMU is better. But I just don't think they're allowed to do it. I could be wrong.
I might be wrong. You might be right. But I did see multiple people talking about that on Twitter, like including people who like one of the podcasts I listen to, who's like a college football podcast. It's a guy who used to be an odds maker, and he was saying, "How does that make any sense that they put him above?" So I'm pretty sure that is the case. That it's the college football playoff committee making that decision. But I could be wrong. You might be right. Maybe there's an auto thing. If that is the case, that makes absolutely no sense to me. How could you do that? How could you have SMU behind them and yet have because here's the thing. Here's what my
Liberty's playing. What game is it that they're playing?
They're playing Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. So they're in the Fiesta Bowl. But here's the thing, dude. My point is they had, regardless of whether they did or not, they had Liberty above. They had them ranked above SMU.
Yeah. Well, and listen, I agree that it's stupid, but like in the AP poll, no matter who you play, or in the college football playoff poll, because they can't, I think that they're limited on some of the stuff they do. I agree with what you're saying because, sure, they completely screwed Florida State when it comes to selecting for the playoff, but I think the playoff, and like I said, we'll have to look it up. I have no idea. I think it has a different criteria on whatever. But we'll have to look it up and see. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I agree with you. I think SMU is better than Liberty. I think
Troy would be a favorite against both of them on a neutral field.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
No, they would. Troy would. I looked it up. Troy would be a 4-point favorite against SMU.
Against SMU?
Yep, they would.
How? Then how was Liberty that many? Sorry. Tulane was playing at home that game, right?
Yeah, they were at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess that makes sense. I don't know, though. I don't
know
watching
that I agree with it, but that's what the power rankings say.
Troy can run I guess it all depends on your run defense. Troy can run the ball. They got that big receiver we talked about. Their defense is pretty stout.
Their two losses were to James Madison and Kansas State.
Yeah. That App State versus them game was a 4-point game with App State at midfield, 4th and 1, and the wheels fell off the wagon after that for App State.
I think we both agree Liberty. The point being, Liberty is not good. Shouldn't be in a New Year's Six Bowl. They played nobody, and they get in with one of the worst schedules in the history of college football. Really.
Yeah.
Which is
it'll be interesting if it changes. Now we go to 12 teams. Like what the obviously they're going to be able to put it. There'll always be, I think, one. I don't know what the criteria is for when we move to 12-team playoff next year.
I think one group of 5 team has to get in.
Yeah. It's the highest ranked one, I think.
I believe it's the same. I think it's the same way they're doing the New Year's Six Bowl. That team would just be in the playoff as a whatever seed.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
I'm curious to see how they're going to do it because I thought my understanding about the 12-team playoff initially was going to be the 5 power conference champs are in, but there is no Pac-12 anymore. So what's the new auto bid? Is there only 4 auto bids and then one group of 5 and the other 7 are based on ranking in the college football playoff? I don't know. I will say this. The 12-team playoff does fix this to me because the inherent issue with a 4-team playoff is you had 5 Power 5 conferences in 4 spots. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So at least with the 12-team, to me, there's not going to be nearly as much of an argument. It'll be more like the NCAA tournament where it's like, okay, yeah, is the 68th team who got left out, is it bullshit? Yeah. Did they have any chance to win the national title? No. Yeah. So it's the same type of deal that's going to come up. Like, is the 13th place team going to probably have a grief next year? Probably. There'll probably be some debate on, should they have gotten in?
It doesn't really matter.
Doesn't really matter, no. Right. And it'll be really a lot more fun to see, but going to be interesting to see how these games play out. And let's talk real quick about some of these games. And I know we're early preview, and we'll dive into
one last thing going back to the playoffs. Go back to the playoffs real quick. I heard someone talk about it too, where you said it made no sense with the 5 power, the 5 power 5 conferences, and only 4 spots. Someone originally, I forgot who it was talking about it. It was like it should have all along been a 6-team playoff with the top 2 teams getting byes and 1 at-large team. And that solves everything, really. Right. It's like, okay, you're probably going to get your at-large team out of the SEC. Maybe sometimes it's Ohio State, like whatever, but it fixes that problem. Yeah,
exactly. And if we had that, there's really, when we went into the decision yesterday, I think everybody kind of knew probably what was going to happen or had a good idea, but we knew that there were 6 teams that were deserving probably to go, and that would have fixed it, like you said. Like Georgia and FSU get in if we have a 16 playoff, and it would have been a lot. It would have been Texas versus Georgia, and it would have been Bama versus Florida State, and then we would have had Michigan and Washington with the bye, which is exactly what should have happened.